And you're listening to Tony Bacigalupo. My show is called You Are Invited, and you are listening to it right here on WFUT, Factory Underground Radio. We are live here at the studio, Factory Underground, above ground, on the second floor of the Factory Underground studio. And so my name is Tony Bacigalupo. I'm going to be with you for the next hour. And you were just listening to oh gosh, it was right there. Oh, it's gone. Okay, so I will pull that up for you guys in a second. But in the meantime, I am joined in the studio. Oh, it was Knox. Knox with Not the 1975. So if you were looking for the 1975, that was not it. That was not the 1975. So today is my second show. We did a pilot last week, and today we're doing a co-pilot, and we are talking about the power of the simple thing that is belonging, bringing people together, the simple power of invitations, and what that can do to help people find connection both for yourself and for the world around you. And so I've got two very special guests with me today. And so they're hanging out with me in the studio. Am I coming through good, both of you guys? Yeah, we're looking good here so far. So first off, I want to introduce the most beautiful, stunning, incredible, brilliant, wonderful, kind, thoughtful, caring individual I know, Christina Bacigalupo, my wife. Hi, Christina.
Hi. Thank you for that. Well,
Hang on.
no.
Oh. All right, that was all me. All right, let's try that again.
Hi.
Hey.
Thank you for that, my love. That was very sweet. I have a face for radio.
So no, absolutely not. You come from television, but you were behind the scenes there as well. And we've also got Mr. Rob Pratt here as well. Welcome, Rob.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
All right.
Happy to be here.
So, obviously, the three of us planned this way in advance, so we are very prepared.
It's buttoned up.
Buttoned up to the nines. We just wrapped up a co-working session that we're doing here at the Factory Underground studio, where we just hung out, got some work done, and we had a good time. Got some stuff done. Did you guys get some stuff done today?
Yeah.
Sure.
So I just literally pulled these two into the studio and said, hey, let's do this. So y'all, Christina, you know, of course, what my spiel is because I gab at you all the time about it. And Rob, you and I have talked a little bit earlier today about all of the different things going on in the world. But here's kind of what I'm playing with is I think that the more we just spend time by ourselves at home, the more we are just going to feel bummed out. And if we get out of the house and we start doing stuff with other people, then we at least feel better, but we also maybe give ourselves the chance to do good for our communities and for each other as well. And so I guess what I'm curious about is just that taking a step back for a second is what was something that you were a part of maybe growing up, this for either of you, that you felt was really valuable to you in terms of your sense of connection and belonging to your community?
Do you want to go first? Oh, I'll go first? Okay. The first thing that came to mind for me was in high school. Sophomore through senior year, I was in an arts group called STAC, the Student Television Arts Company. And it was really unique for a public school to do something like this. It was a group of 36 students. You had to audition to get into the program. And there were 6 different disciplines that you could be in the program for. And art, dance, drama, voice, music, and writing. Wow, I still remember. But it was a third of your day. So you figure you were giving up your lunch and your 2 elective periods to be there. And it was a lot of work. We had video production requirements. We did film study. We did art study. We did classes based on our different disciplines. And I remember shortly after joining just being in a room and being like, oh, cool, I'm here with all these people that think this stuff is just as cool as I do and want to talk about movies and go to the theater after school and see a show and stuff. And, it was just a very special group of people over, 4 years of high school, freshman through senior, that just kind of got to be together and be our weird theater theater nerdy drama kids together. And, it's not a surprise to me that the group has such a strong alumni following now. The group is still going under new leadership. Funny enough, the person who runs the program was a student of the program while I was there. It's pretty crazy, but that was like my defining high school group.
So was I always find theater, like just being part of the theater community, I feel like it becomes very insular because everybody has like funny hours and all of that stuff. You felt that did you feel excluded at all from the rest of the community? Like that it was like theater people against the world, or?
No, it just was like when we were getting ready to put on a show or we were getting ready to do our thing, like that's where our focus was. So, we might be missing parties or missing other like gatherings, and like our friends were like cool with things like that. I think it was more just being with a group who understood, like really understood why we had to, miss things, and they were in it with us. I think that was, I don't know, that's sort of an answer, but no, I felt excluded from other folks in terms of like no one else wanted to talk about those things with me. It's like, Christina, stop talking about theater like for a minute, and I would go to Stack and be like, did you guys see such and such is coming to Broadway? And it was like, So they were my people.
And then it's kind of like it's like all you guys tend to want to talk to, and the last thing anybody else wants to talk about. Yeah,
exactly.
And did you? So we're the same age basically. Was hanging out normal? Like, did you have friends over your house? Did you go to other people's houses at all?
Yeah. Well, definitely when I was like little, we'd have play dates and stuff, but high school, it was, I feel like when I got my driver's license, it was around the time that Starbucks was becoming big. So it's like we would go to places like Starbucks or the Witch's Brew on Long Island, which is an awesome place. Check
Legendary.
It out. You don't know it.
Yeah.
But we definitely did hang out. But, my friends weren't like into video games or like things like that. So it was more like hanging out at like the diner or at a place like that. But yeah.
You definitely didn't spend time at home on your phone because we didn't.
No, my first phone was a flip phone.
How old were you?
16.
16 when you got your
first phone when I started driving.
Oh, that's good.
Something happened. Yeah.
I didn't get a phone till 18, so there you go. Rob, how about yourself?
Similar to theater, I was in band.
Oh, okay.
Playing the trombone from basically about 6th grade on through the rest of high school. And with band came marching band. So you had before the school year started, we'd have summer rehearsals, right? So that was like, I think about 2 weeks every day for 2 weeks in the hot August heat and sun. And so with marching band, you're playing at high school football games, you're going to band competitions, right? So that involves, bus rides to New Jersey or other parts of Connecticut or whatever. And so there's the camaraderie that's built in the back of the band bus, as we would call it. Right? Just the typical, kids with we didn't need anywhere to go. Just put us in the back of the band bus with plenty of sugar. And then, once marching band season was over, then we'd have jazz band. And so there were performances and competitions and orchestra and all that. So yeah, I would say like my formative high school experience was mostly around being in band. But I would also say like some of the other things that you guys got me thinking about was, being a part of the Boy Scouts for most of my adolescence, right? And then being a paper delivery boy, really connected me to my neighborhood, because I'd have to collect cash payments from my customers, the subscribers back then. So I'm dating myself a bit. But I got to know a lot of my neighbors, through that job. So yeah.
That's awesome. And so, how did that interaction go when you were getting to know your neighbors? Were there some that were talking your ear off? Like, how did that go as a delivery person?
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty talkative, and I found it usually more comfortable to interact with adults when I was that age. So yeah, it was a mix. Some would just pay you, and then the others would chat about what was going on, and you get into some interesting conversations, learn a little bit about their life. They were mostly curious about what was going on with a young person's life, and what because you're progressing so rapidly at that age, right? You're starting a new grade, you're learning new topics, etc. So
Love that.
yeah.
Love that. And so, how do you? And when did you get your first phone?
Oh God, now I'm really gonna age.
You don't have to answer it, but
I think I was in my mid-20s, yeah, or early 20s. Early 20s. It was a Motorola Razr.
Oh, that was a cool phone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
Kids
nothing
had
more
that
satisfying
phone.
than flipping that open and then slamming it closed.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, very satisfying. But yeah, like my first communication device was like a beeper in like the summer of my freshman year of college. And that lasted just a summer because it wasn't being used.
Yeah.
Didn't need it. It was just an impulse purchase, and yeah, not worth it.
So what I'm wondering is, now we're grown-ups and it's been a fair bit of time since those days, and things have changed. Folks who are the age that we were back then are not going out as much. They're not hanging out as much. I'm sure there are still folks who are in theater. There's still folks who are in band, and that I'm sure provides a healthy backstop. And I feel like, joining interest groups, clubs, communities, things like that is still so important. But I'm also feeling like there are, by the numbers, just a lot less people doing stuff, a lot less people participating. So I guess what I'm wondering is, now as grown-ups, what are your expectations around what you experience as community, as your neighborhood? Like, Rob, do you know your neighbors at all, either next to you or in your block, in your vicinity? Like, what's your relationship to your neighborhood like?
So I live in the suburbs of Norwalk, in Rowayton particularly. So it's not like I'm in a large apartment building where, you may never cross paths with somebody you live next to just due to your schedule.
Yeah.
So there's that. But yeah, I feel like I do know a good portion of my neighbors, but I think the pandemic accelerated it. But with so many people coming from New York City into the suburbs, right? Especially around the pandemic, there was kind of like a way of operating in the city that they brought with them, rather than being uber social. It was more like the extreme of good fences make good neighbors.
Yeah.
And but I will say that in my area neighborhood, I'm lucky to have made friends with people that I go swimming with regularly during an extended swim season. So we're enthusiasts, and we call ourselves the High Tide Club, because we usually meet around high tide and go swimming in the Long Island Sound. And so we get to know each other. There's safety in numbers, especially with some of the aggressive boating that's out there. So yeah, that's one way in which I feel connected to my community in particular, right?
And how did you start talking to the folks that you live closest to? I don't imagine you were delivering their newspapers.
No.
So that's a callback.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah, usually it's the neighbors that I'm right next door to, in terms of either, their kid's ball comes into the yard, or something happened in the neighborhood that, is like, oh, hey, did you, see that? What have you heard about X, Y, and Z happening? And then it just extends from there. But to me, it just seems like a very slow pace of getting to know people, just because so many people living, especially in the suburb, they're parents with kids, right? So they're like extremely busy, right? Especially the way that things are, happening culturally these days, in terms of keeping the kids engaged with a bunch of different after school programs. Parents having to work longer hours than what used to be the case back in the 80s, 90s, right? So yeah, I just feel like it's a slow pace of getting to know certain neighbors.
Mhm.
And then there are some neighbors I feel like there are certain people that you just, because you never introduced each other and you've seen each other for years, you just are in this like default behavior of never interacting with each other, which to me is like, it's unfortunate, but I mean, I'm engaging in that too. So, I'm not blaming them, but I just find that to be a funny human behavior that I've noticed,
Yeah. No, it is funny how you run into these kind of ruts or patterns where, like, we've gotten to know one of our neighbors really well and we're hanging out with her regularly, but our other neighbors we don't know at all and probably never will, And it just kind of works out that way. And then of course there's the people that you kind of know, like maybe you recognize them from the hallway or whatever, and maybe you met them once and they told you their name and then you forgot their name. So now now you have that like shame of I don't remember what your name is. I'm sorry.
100%.
So there's a story that a friend of mine sent me today that I was planning on talking about today, and I would love to get your impressions of this because I think it's a really interesting recipe for bringing people together. So there's this couple in San Francisco, Patty Smith and her husband Tyler, who 18 months ago started a new tradition that they just started to have coffee outside the front of their home. Now, they didn't have a proper stoop. This was kind of like hanging out on the stoop. So they just took folding chairs and put them out like on the sidewalk. And after a few weeks, they literally just made like a regular tradition of doing this. And a neighbor came by and introduced himself and said like, "Hey, let me know when you're doing the next one. Here's my phone." And they started one thing led to another. And now there's this whole kind of stoop community that they are running. They have a WhatsApp group. They have other events that they've organized. They did a pancake event, things like that, and they started exchanging stuff on the WhatsApp group. People started supporting each other, selling stuff, like just helping each other out. It became like a whole, basically like an informal neighborhood association. Basically, all arose out of two people sitting and having coffee on a stoop. And I just thought it was an interesting case study in a lot of ways because they did this thing that was very simple and very visible of being out, visible in the world, and reachable, and being consistent, but then also inviting people to help and participate and contribute and ultimately provide value to each other to the point where they could step away from it and other people would show up and kind of keep the tradition going. I guess I just wonder, I don't know, what do you think of that story? Sounds fun.
I think it's a very sweet idea and it's so simple, which I love. And when you were telling the story, Tony, I was thinking, okay, if I saw this, what would I do? And I think when we lived in the city, if I saw people drinking coffee on their stoop, I'd be like, oh, how lovely, and wave and move on my way. If I saw it in like the burbs, like on grass, so like on like the lawn, I'd be like, what is going on there? Like, I would honestly assume they were like waiting to pick up like their grandkids from like the school bus, or
Yeah.
something, but not bother them or interact with them. I just like wave and go about my way. But I love that you said someone went up to them and said, "Hey, I want to like come to your next," like how they figured that out, that this wasn't just like, "Hey, we don't have a porch, so we're gonna sit in our lawn." Because if there was like if they like posted somewhere like, "Hey, everybody, we're having coffee on our lawn, come join us," I would know it's okay. I feel like from the outside, I feel like I'm intruding on their space, even though, you know, they probably want people to come over and talk to them, but I'd be a little bit like apprehensive.
There's that dance floor theory of like these were the two people who started the party, the dance party, but then there was the one person who joined them, and that was what really pushed the snowball down the mountain, was the first joiner.
That's a great like way to think of it, because you and I went to a party last year and we were the first two people on the dance floor. I'm happy to do that. I'm like, fine, let's do it. Let's get out there. But if we hadn't been the first two people, I don't think I would have gone to join.
Oh, that's it. So if there was already a crowd?
If it was a large crowd, I would go and join. But if there were just two people, I wouldn't. Again, I'd be like, oh, no, I'm stepping on their toes. I'm stepping in their space.
Oh, it's interesting. So there's kind of like a valley of participation where it feels like you'd be intruding. Like if it's like a small crew, like a clique maybe.
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah. I think it's a great idea, and I think that, you know, the reward of trying something like that is the people that end up joining are the people you'd probably want to know and you know, communicate or connect with. And so I think that's interesting, and I think that there are things, if people want to try that, they could do certain things to kind of grease the wheels, so to speak, like bring out extra chairs. So it makes it look like if you do want to stop by and sit with us, we have extra chairs for you.
Yeah.
Maybe have a pot of coffee or tea or whatever with extra cups, if that's something you wanted to try. In that same vein, there's a great person who lives in Rowayton who, for the past, I want to say 2 winters, has really tried to foster community among the people that bring their dogs to the beach at Bailey Beach during the winter. And this guy will quite regularly bring really nicely made food, like gourmet level food, to share with people, and drinks and stuff like that. And everybody's welcome to join. And over time, he's built a small community of people that would normally just bring their dogs and let their dogs run around and not really interact with each other or get to know each other, but now know each other and talk and catch up and enjoy each other's company. And obviously there's some self-selection there, right? People that aren't interested in socializing will sidle up to the table where things are happening. But the people that do, they're interesting people, they're friendly, they're, you know, people you're glad to know over time.
Yeah.
And so so shout out to Dan who is leading by example in terms of, you know, doing his part to build some local community, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the things I found is that, because, you know, I'm thinking about the holistic picture of, you know, just helping a lot of people, and not everybody is super excited to join a social thing, to sit down with some strangers on the sidewalk and drink coffee or whatever it is. And so I'm always looking out for, you know, what are ways that people could not just attract other people and socialize, but do so in a way that's visibly making other people feel like they're part of something, even if they don't participate. So just to give you an example, when I was running my co-working space in New York City, it was called New Work City, and we had a new cohort of members that we brought together. It was actually because the engagement in my community was super low that it had just kind of drifted over time. And I created a new program. It was a simple accountability group, social gathering, that kind of thing. And it was something where a core group of people came together. It was 12 to 15 or so people that were meeting once a week, sharing goals, helping each other. But they self-organized a work sprint that arose out of the accountability group. So it was basically like, all right, we're going to have our private meeting, but now we're going to go follow up on what we just said we were going to do and actually do that work together in the co-working space. And so what ended up happening was that we had this core group of like 12 to 15 people in a co-working space of 100 plus who were super engaged. They knew each other, they knew the space, they were comfortable, they were active. And what I found was that the other people who were not part of that community started participating more. They started staying longer. They started being a little friendlier to each other. And even though they weren't actively members of the thing that we were doing, the whole community got better just because a small number of people were more social, So I was just, I like the idea of not just doing stuff social, but doing stuff visibly social. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think, I don't know. I think visibly, letting people see like, hey, look, we're all going to do this thing. We're all watching this thing. It's helpful. But I think the most important thing is showing that anyone could join. That it's not, I keep going back to this click thing.
Yeah.
It's not a private thing. If I saw Dan having snacks on the beach, I might think, oh, it's a private thing and not go over. So maybe a little sign saying like, all are welcome, completely free. Or, as a new member at your co-working space and being like, hey, every Tuesday we have a standing lunch at noon. You're welcome to join. No pressure. Everyone, takes care of their own meal and it's an easy thing. Join if you want. If you don't want to, it's okay. I think that invitation, it being out there to people is really important, because it's nice to hear that people started, like, they saw the nice things you all were doing going out together and they sort of lightened up a little and were nicer to each other. And I think that's great. But I think if they had known that they were, or I'm not saying you guys didn't invite them, but if they know that they are always welcome to join, I think that goes a long way too.
Yeah, it's that balancing act, because you don't want to harass people.
Right. And honestly, like, I remember I was invited somewhere once with some coworkers and I was not free that day. I couldn't do it. I was never asked again. And like, that hurt. It's like, it's not a one and done situation. It's like standing invitation, always welcome, is how it really should be.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I feel like, so with these folks, one of the things they did once they started scaling up, like once they kind of had their core group started, was that when they did their pancake party, they made 100 invitations. They called them door drops. I've never heard that phrase before in this context, but I guess they mean like flyers, basically, that they then distributed to all of their neighbors. And they also posted flyers up on telephone poles. So there was this like very grassroots, like proactive sense of like, hey, maybe you saw us hanging out on the street, and just so you're invited. Like, it's cool, you could be a part of this too. Awesome. And we're doing pancakes. Who doesn't like pancakes? Carbs are one of the great bringer togetherers. What's the word? So social
lubricants.
Social lubricants. Social glue. Yeah.
It's the gluten.
Oh, the social gluten. The social gluten.
Some people are allergic to gluten, so we need an alternative too.
Social gluten free. No, but it's true. I feel like food's an easy win too.
Yeah, 100%.
And just a low barrier. This is a term I think I learned from you, Tony. Low barrier of entry.
Yeah.
Hey, we're not asking for money, or if you want to bring a snack, if you can't bring anything, totally okay. You're still welcome. It's like, you don't have to have special skills to go to a pancake breakfast. You just have to go with a good attitude and an empty belly.
Now, if you did need skills to go to a pancake breakfast, what would what skill sets would you need?
Oh,
If it was like competitive pancake
I
breakfast?
think like flipping.
Ooh. Oh, like you could have people competing over their pancake flipping abilities?
Yes.
That's good.
There's also pancake art. Have you seen pancake art?
Oh yeah.
No, I can't do it.
With like drizzling
Yeah,
the
and they make
batter.
like Mickey Mouse, like with the batter.
Yeah, and I think people have even gotten as creative as using food coloring with some of the, different batches of food coloring to create, a multicolored pancake of artwork.
My goal is not to burn them. I don't think I'd have time to.
I more want to get them from the griddle to my face as quickly as possible.
That could be
know?
part of the flipping.
Just straight into the mouth.
One thing I would love to learn is how to do like the fluffiest pancakes, right? Like you can see, certain restaurants specialize in or whatever, but a fluffy pancake would be a goal of mine.
I love pancakes.
I'm sorry. Well, I also I think about this with brunch too. So you and I, Love, have talked about hosting brunch at our apartment, and there was a story that I heard about. I think it was actually through TikTok, which I don't use, so I don't know how the stories find me, but I think maybe sometimes people send them to me or whatever it is. But there was a family, I want to say it was in Ohio, somewhere in the middle, that they got this brunch tradition going, and it started out with just family, and then it was inviting a few friends, and they added a few bits of tradition along the way. And so there was a sense of, okay, well, first of all, who's going to bring what? And, maybe there's like a shared spreadsheet for that. So people are bringing different things. And then it became, well, if you are in the brunch crew, you can invite someone to join you. And so it ended up kind of expanding outward to this, like group of regulars. But they started to add in traditions, like they had a runner that they would put out on the dining table, and anybody who joined for the first time would sign the runner. So it would be like a
Cool.
running guest book of everybody who was there.
Running this
Running.
Sorry.
And so and they started doing things like celebrating like things that were going on and celebrating wins, that it became like who had a birthday that month, that kind of thing. I just feel like it's such a simple thing, just having people over. What stops us from inviting people over to our homes? I feel like that it is harder than it used to be, or it's less common than it used to be.
Honestly, I blame capitalism. Those extra extended working hours, and just the amount of commuting a lot of people have to do. More and more people have to commute, and their extensive commutes, and that on top of the workday can lead to a pretty exhausting day where I think people have just enough energy to make their dinner and then stream a show or something like that, right?
So do you think that it's like people have gotten busier, or that it's like it's gotten harder?
Well, I think being busier has made it harder to have the energy. I mean, in the 50s, right, there used to be bowling leagues that people would participate in, right? And, there was just more civic engagement because people had the time and the space for that, right? They weren't commuting as, less people were commuting as they are now, right? Commuting shorter distances, so less time, more sane working hours, like 9 to 5, a hard 9 to 5. I just feel like things have extended so much in terms of, because of the internet, because of mobile devices, the extended availability that people sometimes have to have as part of their job. right? Like I had one friend who, if she wanted to go out to dinner, she had to bring her laptop with her because she had this one really demanding client that would, come in with like, some emergency that she would have to respond to. So, I just feel like a lot of our free time has been taken up, by what we need to do just to, make rent or mortgage, put food on the table, send your kids to daycare. All that stuff has really created a pressing demand. So, and, is resulted in less social community engagement, as well as that also, I think, translates to less civic engagement in terms of, being able to be aware of what our local politicians are doing all the way up to, federal and making a difference there. So
do you think it's a work thing that we're too busy and that's creating some of these issues?
I think we're overscheduled too.
Mm.
Like part of it is work. Very few people do work the standard 9 to 5 nowadays, especially with our little computers in our pockets. We need to be reachable all the time. But you mentioned kids earlier, and it's like, yeah, if you have kids, guess what? Your Saturday is ballet or soccer or Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts or whatever, and you can't find that time to go have brunch with your friends. It's like the free time all of a sudden is a luxury. It's something you just don't have time for.
Well, and as a parent, you're also making up for the free time you didn't have during the work week.
Exactly.
To devote to raising your kid and spending
doing things with them.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. I know parents have a lot of guilt sometimes, going out and not doing stuff with their kids because they're like, I barely see my kids during the week. Yeah.
Well, and the social lives of kids and parents with kids is kind of like a whole other universe of complexity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where, I feel like a few decades back, kids leaving the house, spending more time with each other in person was kind of easier for people to be okay with. And now it's almost like, it has to be a lot more controlled or a lot more safe or a lot more, supervised. And that makes it harder. And then, kids are on the screens more too.
And it's hard too, just, I feel like I didn't really realize this until the past few years, just how the typical work schedule and school schedule do not play nicely together. It's the fact that an adult has to work till 6 p.m., but their kid is out of school at 3 is a problem.
Yeah.
You have to pay for either childcare or aftercare or some sort of
after school program.
Unless you're, when your kid gets older and they're in clubs and things, it's a little different. But, and working from home, I think helps because you could, go pick up your kid or, spend some time with them in the afternoon and then jump back into work and stuff. But yeah, it's amazing how little time we all have together because school and work just don't line up.
It's strange to me because I feel like, we have more remote work, we have more work from home, we have more just flexibility in theory, that you would think it would get easier, that it would get better, but for some reason it seems to be going the other direction.
I think that's because, like, when we were working from home during the pandemic, we'd work till 6, 7 p.m. at night because people were like, oh, you're not commuting, so that means you're reachable. Your computer's right there in your living room, so that means you're reachable.
Yeah. Or you would have a coworker, hypothetically, who would maybe be dealing with other things during business hours and then getting back to work later in the day when you're getting ready to wrap up.
Right. And you have to keep checking your email because you need that answer for your next day or for something's pending and you need feedback. So I think that was one of the downsides with the pandemic and working from home is we were just expected to be reachable.
Yeah.
I remember the first day back in the office after work from home was lifted or the restrictions were lifted and it was 5:30 and everyone got up and went, when I go home, like, I'm done, right? Like, like, I can leave my laptop here. I'm not expected to continue when I get home, because we were so used to, like, you don't stop working at 5:30. You work through dinner. No one ever said it, but it was just expected.
Yeah. That's a strange thing. How many times working from home did I end up not cooking dinner when I thought I would, just because I stayed on the machine until I was hungry and then it was too late. And it's like I don't have an excuse. Like I should be able to cook. I'm at home. I should be able to cook while I'm working. And maybe there's some other factors at play there. But I feel like this is the lack of boundaries and structure doesn't serve us. Like it's a big adjustment to try to account for that.
Well, it serves someone, but it's not us. That's for sure. Yeah, I think, and with the way certain things are managed or expected in terms of the employer-employee relationship, you have a situation where a lot of people feel they can't establish those boundaries. If they could personally with their manager that they may get along great with, there may be, a couple of people higher up that have expectations that are counter to that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, for me personally, just with my career being in like digital marketing, where there'd be like an email blast going out at, sometime that, after work hours or whatever, and the client may discover that there was an issue and we needed to put a halt on something or whatever. I've felt ever since, basically the early aughts that there wasn't great boundaries. Mm-hmm. Like work didn't stop at 5 or 6 o'clock, but that was usually because I was working in, internet startups basically. Mm-hmm. Right. But I feel that hustle culture is giving it, I think, too much credence. It's more like hustle porn that a lot of startups try and put out there in terms of working nights and weekends and then having some great payoff later. I think that has kind of bled into other companies and industries that don't need it, have never needed it, but they felt like, oh, well, we need to replicate that if we want to have a certain amount of growth or, corporate value or whatever. But yeah, I just feel like, the boundaries, God bless you if you're in a situation where you can negotiate that and enforce it and have it be respected. Right.
Yeah. You're not seen as a hard worker unless you're putting in those hours. And it's like, no, I am, I'm an effective worker. I am can't think of it.
Yeah.
Productive. I am productive during these hours. You were my focus. This is what I did. Mm-hmm. And now I'm done.
Yeah.
Think about it, like in college, you pull an all-nighter. Why'd you pull an all-nighter? Probably because you waited till the last minute and you weren't doing what you're supposed to be doing. Like, we shouldn't be celebrating that you pulled an all-nighter. Right. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's that weird feeling like, oh, they were on vacation and answering their emails, how dedicated they are. And it's like, what does it get you?
Yeah. Some of the better remote teams that I've worked with do a good job of setting an expectation at the top of past a certain time. Like once we're offline, we don't use Slack anymore until the next day. Like just period. Even if you don't, even if I'm going to send you something and not expect you to respond, it's like, no, I'm not going to send you something. So then you don't have to have that internal conflict of like, oh, my boss sent me something. Are they expecting me to respond? And even if they say they don't, would they be impressed if I was,
Yeah. And I had an instance where they were like, hey, they sent instructions on how to delay an email being sent out. Like, hey, y'all, let's do this thing where if you're working late because you think of something that Tony has to do in the morning, how to set your email to do it, and then they would never do it.
Yeah,
you still get the email. Oh, sorry, it was just easier just to send it or just to text you.
Yeah,
and I was like, it starts at the top.
Yeah,
if you lead by example and say, hey, I'm going on vacation with my family. See you in a week.
Yeah.
There's plenty of other people around who can help you. great.
Yep.
But if they're doing checking emails when their kid goes to sleep on vacation, then it's like, well, I want to get to that level, so should I be doing it?
Exactly. If my boss is doing it, then that must be what it takes to get there.
Right. It's like, I don't want to get there. You know? I'm so grateful growing up, like, in a time where, you know, my dad's job in particular, you know, long hours sometimes, he had to work on the weekends sometimes. But when we were, like, away, he was fully present. And, you know, because he didn't have a phone. He couldn't be reached.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's like, I could not imagine my childhood of sitting with like my dad or my mom and them being on phones the whole time.
Yeah.
It would just be, I feel like my relationships with them would be different. I feel like so much would be different.
Yeah.
You maybe would have gotten away with a lot more bad stuff.
Right.
Sneaking in that extra handful of kids cereal.
I did that. No, but yeah.
I feel like also, I mean, what example is that setting for the kids too? You know, seeing that like now your parents are not having those boundaries as well. There was a joke that went around a couple of years ago, or I forget when, about European culture versus American culture, and it was like the vacation responder, and obviously we're painting with broad strokes as a joke, but the European autoresponder was, I'm on holiday with family for the next 2 months. Talk to you in September. And then the American one was like, I'm going to take 2 hours during lunch because I have surgery, but I'll still have my phone with me. So text me if you need something. And it's like, wow, it felt really true.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. You know, I feel like back to the whole, you know, boundaries and stuff like that. I feel like one of the reasons why so many companies are trying to get employees back into the office instead of allowing hybrid or remote work to continue is visually they measure your productivity by your face time. Like, okay, I know they were in the office from this time to this time, and it's not about your actual output or, you know, productivity or whatever. It is actually a failure of their intelligence to not be able to measure your performance by actual productivity, right? And that they want you, you know, there present and for them to visually assess, right? They could go take the long lunch, right? And they could go do the things they need to do, but as long as they see you in the office, they feel, you know, something that, you know, they just find hard to measure otherwise, or haven't, you know, properly devoted the time to come up with the right measurement criteria, right? And I also think it's a bit of a power trip too, like an ego thing, you know, like all these people that I could see, they work for me, you know.
I could check in and see what any one of them were doing. I remember when I was going into the office right after we were able to go back, and I used to joke with Tony, like, I was in the office 2 days a week, and it was, I'm going to get no work done these 2 days because I haven't seen you in a long time. I want to catch up. I want to go have lunch. Just physically walking from one meeting to another eats up a lot of time, depending on how big your building is. I was so much more productive at home because a meeting ended and it was, okay, everyone, see you later, jump to the next one, instead of, you know, let's sit and chat for a little bit. And I loved that time. And that's why I liked the balance, the hybrid schedule, I think makes the most sense. Yeah. But when they're like, oh, come in the office 4 days a week and work from home 1, it's like,
yeah,
what
it's like the one's like a consolation, right?
Yeah, well, that one day you get home, right? You know, depending on the amount of time you need to commute each day of those 4 days, let's say it's an hour and a half there and back, you know, like, so 3 hours of your day total. I mean, that's if you're commuting from Norwalk into NYC, like some location there. That's 3 hours a day times 4. That's 12 hours spent commuting, right?
Yeah.
And not all of that can be productive for yourself or for the office because, you know, there's the walking and the driving and whatever else, right? So, yeah, I feel like businesses that can do reasonable hybrid, where it's like, when we bring you together, it's with purpose and intention. We're either going to have collaborative meetings, discussions, working, you know, working out situations or having one-on-ones for review and stuff like that. And then the rest of the time, please be wherever you need to be most productive and get it done and be focused. And we will figure out, we'll measure how that's working out in ways other than required face time or online time or, whatever your Slack shows you in terms of you being online and available versus offline or away or whatever, right? Like there are companies that are putting in monitoring software on remote workers' computers.
Yep.
And then there are products on Amazon that are called mouse jigglers
Mm-hmm.
that move the mouse around so that, and of course they've updated the software to determine whether or not you're, is this mouse jiggler activity or is it actual, working and everything like that. And it's just, it's kind of ludicrous. I just feel like, I feel that the companies that figure out how to be more humane in personal in understanding that productivity doesn't always translate to being in the office 8-9 hours every day and whatever it takes for commuting. Whatever companies figure that out, they're going to be the most competitive. People will want to work for them because it's not just about me as an employee looking for a remote or hybrid work situation. It's me as an employee looking for a company that gets it, that isn't holding itself to these antiquated methods of determining performance. So the companies that figure this out, they're going to be more performative because they're measuring what matters.
Yeah.
And they're focused on what matters rather than the performative stuff, right? So I think like overall companies that understand that, they're going to be competitive and get the best people and do the best compared to others in their industry.
Oh, the top talent's going to demand it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I wonder about the changing nature of how we spend that time as well, because I feel like part of it is this lack of boundaries, and part of it maybe also is the fact that we're spending more time certainly on screens. We've had, screen-based white-collar work for a long time, but maybe more meetings, more video meetings. Like I feel like I'm a different kind of tired at the end of a workday now than I was maybe 5 or 10 years ago. Do you guys notice something different there too? I feel like people are socially exhausted in a way when the workday's over.
It's called getting older.
I
hate to tell you that, Tony.
Something has been changing, Rob.
Yeah.
Something in my life has changed in the last 10, 20 years. And I've also been gaining weight. And I got a little heartburn and some gray hairs. I can't put my finger on it. What could it be?
There was one point in my career where I was working for a company and like every 2 weeks I was pulling an all-nighter. I was like chugging 5-hour energies, things which, over time did something to my stomach that wasn't good. I just felt it. Also wasn't good for your heart, either. But that burned me out and that wasn't maintainable, right? And I definitely have to manage myself and my workload differently these days because if I want to pull an all-nighter, I will be useless, right? For the days after that, right? Like, I used to be able to go into the city and really, tie one on and, catch the, early morning train back or the really late train back and be okay. That is not the case anymore, right? And so, but, beyond that, with the smartphone, our screen time has gone from being at the office at a desktop or a laptop, right, to also having that with you from the moment you wake up to the moment you fall asleep, maybe too late because you've been scrolling and got sucked into something, right? And didn't fall to sleep at a normal time because that light, you don't believe that blue light filter stuff. It's just the engagement in the light period that's getting into your eyes that's keeping you up, right?
Yeah.
So all of that contributes to not having the energy we should, right? Because we're, one, sucked into these screens, but two, because it's influencing our sleep, our quality of sleep, right? So there's
Mhm.
that, and that is not something you get over in one day,
Mhm.
right? And the more you have those bad sleep habits or that poor quality of sleep, the more long-term effects it has for you,
Mhm.
right? So I feel that, yeah, I mean, especially as you age, we don't have the energy stores to bounce back,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So it's kind of like a hangover, but it's with screen time and sleep and busyness and never. I mean, some people are great at this, others are not, which is breaking away from all stimuli, right? That's fed to you or scrolled through to you, and disconnecting and letting your mind wander.
Yeah.
Right.
There's been talk a lot recently in the streams I follow about boredom, the importance of it, that we as a society, we're not able to be bored anymore, that we're constantly stimulated, constantly entertained, and that's bad.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. Well, I wonder, because part of my theory has been, well, if we give people more stuff to do, then they will do more stuff. We'll spend less time on screens, and then things will get better. I'm wondering if maybe that is true for some people, but for other people, it kind of has to go the other way first, where I need to like make more space for refreshing myself and resting and not being on my screens before I can have the energy to then get back up and put on my clothes and go be social again. Because asking people to be social is asking a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's logic to that. But I mean, I think each person has to decide for themselves, right? What they're ready for, what's best for them. And I think it's, up to us as a larger community of modeling that for ourselves, for friends and family, and just talking about it, right? And getting that kind of philosophy out there that we have a current societal issue or issues, right? And one way to address that is to disconnect, unplug, get a good night's sleep, really get a good night's sleep, right?
There's an account I follow, the Nap Ministry, and they came out with a book called "Rest is Resistance." I thought that was such a powerful phrase, probably something we all could take to heart.
But I think that's probably more in the terms of physics, right? Because of object at rest stays at
Oh,
rest.
no, you just made a physics joke.
Sorry.
Oh, that's good. In the final minute, too. Y'all, we are at the turn of the hour. Rob, if someone wants to find you on the internet, where do they find you?
I'm on Bluesky, robpratt.bskysocial, and I'm on Instagram as the Rob Pratt, and I usually publish stories, sunsets of Norwalk. So,
that's beautiful. Love that. And Christina?
Oh, goodness. I think the social media platform I use the most is Instagram. There's pictures of fun things and a lot of pictures of us doing fun things, which is nice. And my name on Instagram is Miss Chris 1212.
And I'm Tony Be Good, TonyBGoode. You're listening to WFUT Radio. It is 6 p.m. Eastern Time, and we are signing off here. I'm going to be out traveling for the next few weeks, so you will not be hearing my voice on these airwaves again until the end of April. But in the meantime, do check out Earth Day, April 26th. There's going to be a festival on the green here at Norwalk. Here in Norwalk, I will have a table for my new in-town meetup. And you will be able to learn about all kinds of other wonderful things going on in town. Thanks again to Robin, to Christina, for being my wonderful, way-planned in advance guest, just taking an hour to hang here. And you will hear from us again here on WFUT. Should be Wednesday, April 30th. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Bye.